There's a certain sting that comes when those closest to you mistake your kindness for duty, and your hard-earned joy for something disposable. I had spent years building a life for myself, not out of rebellion, not out of resentment, but from grit, perseverance, and an unwavering belief that I, too, deserved a little peace in this world. Yet, on the day meant to celebrate love and new beginnings, I found myself being stripped of my own. Welcome to Storytelling and Beyond. If our stories touch your heart, please subscribe and support us as we bring you more emotional, real, and unforgettable journeys. The wedding hall sparkled with delicate lights and the gentle hum of chatter as guests admired the lavish decorations. My sister, Emily, looked radiant in her white gown, her eyes shimmering with joy and nervous excitement. I stood near the refreshment table, sipping on lemonade, silently proud of how far she'd come. Despite our differences growing up, I had always wanted the best for her. I'd even helped with part of the planning and discreetly paid for her dress fittings when Mom said the budget was stretched thin. Just as the photographer was setting up for family pictures, my father called me over with a tight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Son," he said, clasping my shoulder a little too firmly, "your sister's big day deserves a grand gesture." I was thinking, what better gift than your house? I blinked, waiting for the punchline that never came. "My house?" I repeated, calmly. "You mean the one I saved for 5 years to buy? The one I built from every overtime shift, every skipped vacation, every sleepless night?" He nodded as though he were doing me a favor. "Exactly. Think about it. It would set her and Jason up for life. You're single, no kids. It's just a roof over your head. She could use that start." It wasn't just a roof over my head. That house was my sanctuary. My proof to myself that I could succeed despite every roadblock I'd faced. It was the smell of wood polish on weekends, the quiet hum of my bookshelf-lined office, the tiny herb garden I'd grown from scratch. Every inch of it was a monument to my journey. "No," I said firmly, holding his gaze. "I love Emily, but I won't give away something that means so much to me. She can build her life the same way I did, with work and time." His eyes narrowed, and something snapped in him. "Ungrateful," he growled under his breath. "You think you're better than this family now? You'd embarrass your sister on her wedding day over a stupid house?" Before I could answer, he reached for the nearest object, the metal cake stand from the dessert table. In one horrifying blur, he raised it and struck me across the head. I heard gasps, the clatter of dishes, and then felt a burning throb as I stumbled, hitting the corner of a table, collapsing onto the floor. Everything went quiet for a moment. My ears rang. My vision blurred. "Dad!" Emily shrieked, running toward me. But then, a voice rang out, deep and steady. Jason, Emily's fiancé, stepped forward, face pale with fury. "Enough," he said coldly. "All of you need to hear what I've been holding back for too long." Everyone turned to look at him, stunned. Even my father's hand froze in the air. Jason's voice trembled with emotion. "I never said anything out of respect for Emily, but after what I just witnessed? You deserve the truth. Your parents have been using you, manipulating you. Your mom came to me last month asking me to convince you to sign your home over quietly. They planned this the whole time." Gasps erupted around the room. My head was spinning, not just from the injury but from the weight of betrayal. All those months of quiet distance, of feeling subtly pushed aside at family gatherings, it all made sense now. My love for them had blinded me to their manipulation. Jason knelt beside me, helping me up gently. "You don't owe them anything," he said. "Not after what they've done." Emily was in tears, looking between Jason and our parents like a child seeing them clearly for the first time. The party was forgotten. What began as a celebration turned into a reckoning. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't crazy for walking my own path, I had just been walking it alone. Until now. The silence that followed the wedding day disaster wasn't just in the air, it crept into every corner of my life. I didn't go home that night. Instead, Jason and Emily insisted I stay with them. Not out of pity, but out of care. And that single gesture started unraveling the thread of years of manipulation that I had mistaken for parental love. Jason had taken me to the emergency room after the incident. The doctor said I had a mild concussion and a bruised shoulder. As I lay in bed the next morning, sunlight streaming through the curtain, I heard Emily sobbing in the kitchen. I walked in, still sore, and she looked up, mascara smudged, cheeks swollen. "I'm so sorry," she said. "For everything. I didn't know what they had planned." I sat down quietly, letting her speak. It was the first honest conversation we'd had in years. "They've always compared us," she whispered. "You were the smart one, the strong one. But they made me feel like I wasn't enough unless I got what you had." I nodded slowly. I understood now. Our parents had played us against each other, feeding insecurity in one and guilt in the other. And we had danced to their tune. The next few days were full of calls from our mother, some angry, some pretending to be apologetic, and a few outright manipulative. "You've embarrassed this family," she said on one voicemail. "We only wanted what's best for Emily." But the last straw came on the fourth day, when I received an envelope at Jason's apartment. It was from a lawyer. Inside was a formal notice that my parents were petitioning to have me declared mentally unfit for property ownership based on erratic behavior and emotional instability. I stared at the paper in disbelief. It was a preposterous lie. But the betrayal sliced deep. This wasn't just a father lashing out in the heat of the moment. This was a calculated move. A message: "If you won't hand it over, we'll take it from you." Jason read the letter, his jaw tightening. "They want war," he muttered. "But we're not going to play by their rules." Emily stood behind him, trembling. I had no idea they'd go this far. "I'll testify. I'll say exactly what happened. So will the guests. There are videos, photos." I exhaled slowly, holding back the wave of anger that surged through me. But then, something else happened. Later that evening, Jason's parents invited us over. It was meant to be a dinner, a small gathering to lift our spirits. But over dessert, his mother turned to me and gently said, "I heard what happened. And I want you to know, what your parents did has nothing to do with who you are. You're welcome here, always." It hit me harder than expected. That warmth. That acceptance. It wasn't just comforting, it was foreign. I had grown so used to proving myself, earning love through effort, that simple kindness left me speechless. The next day, I hired a lawyer. Not to escalate, but to protect myself. And slowly, I began the process of cutting legal ties where necessary. I blocked my parents' numbers. Declined every message. I wasn't running, I was choosing peace. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. A letter arrived at Jason's house. Handwritten. From my father. I did what I had to do, it read. "You think you're better than us now. But when your sister loses everything, you'll see why family must stick together." It wasn't an apology. It was a warning. Something in his tone chilled me. And it made me realize, this wasn't over. A week passed. One quiet, cautious, surreal week. Emily had moved in temporarily with Jason and me, unable to face our parents after everything. She was different now, quieter, more reflective, as if the veil had finally lifted from her eyes. But there was an anxious energy in her too. Like she was waiting for something inevitable to crash down. And it did. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Jason was at work. Emily and I had just finished lunch when her phone buzzed. She answered, listened for a few seconds, and her face went pale. "What?" she whispered. "No. That can't be. Are you sure?" She hung up, hands trembling. "That was Mia," she said, referring to one of her bridesmaids. She heard. "Dad is being investigated. Something about unpaid taxes and hiding assets in my name." I blinked. "What?" Emily nodded slowly, trying to process it. "Apparently, when he was pushing me to demand your house, it wasn't just for me. It was to cover his mess. He's been funneling things into accounts under my name: real estate, investments, even debts. Her voice cracked. I never signed anything. I didn't know. But I believed her now. Emily wasn't the manipulator in this game, she was another pawn. Within hours, the news broke. Our father's company was under investigation for fraud and tax evasion. Not only that, but several people came forward with complaints about unpaid wages and shady contracts. Suddenly, the man who had once strutted in a suit and tie with a proud chest was being dragged through the mud, and his empire was crumbling. By the next morning, my mother called again. But not for an apology. I hope you're happy, she snapped into my voicemail. Your father might go to prison, and your sister will be dragged down with him. All because you refused to help your family. Is that what you wanted? You always were selfish. I deleted the message. Emily sat across from me, tears in her eyes. I didn't ask for any of this. I thought Dad wanted to give me a future. I didn't know he was stealing mine. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm so scared. I reached across the table, taking her hand. You didn't create this mess. You can still choose the life you want to live. For the first time, I saw in her a different kind of strength, the kind born from breaking, not building. And I saw it in myself too. That even when your own family betrays you, you can still rebuild from the ashes. But then, just as we began to breathe, something happened that none of us expected. Jason came home early, his expression grim. You won't believe this, he said, dropping his keys on the counter. Someone leaked your father's case documents to the press. Including. As guests stood frozen in stunned silence, the weight of the evening's chaos finally began to settle. My head throbbed where Dad had struck me, and my pride ached more than any injury. But the unraveling wasn't over yet. My sister Layla, her wedding gown now stained with cake and tears, turned slowly to face her fiancé, Nathan. He stood rigid, fists clenched at his sides, having just exposed the dark truth about my parents, how they had manipulated him with financial promises, encouraging him to marry Layla not for love but for gain. The betrayal still echoed in the hall. But Nathan wasn't done. With an almost eerie calm, he stepped forward and pulled a document from his coat pocket. This, he said, voice shaking but resolute, is a notarized statement. It's a confession your father signed under pressure from me because I told him I wouldn't go through with the wedding unless he came clean. He admitted to threatening his son here, to extorting money from him and manipulating me to marry Layla for connections. The silence turned to whispers. Then gasps. My father lunged for the document, but Nathan handed it quickly to one of my uncles, who had been watching everything unfold in disbelief. You used me, Nathan continued, now facing Layla. I thought I could go through with it. I thought maybe I'd learn to love you. But I can't. I won't. You let your parents poison your heart. Layla's makeup-streaked face crumpled. You said you loved me. I said I was willing to try. But love can't survive in lies. He turned, looked me in the eye, and said, I should have listened when you tried to warn me. Then he walked out. The guests began to murmur again. My mother tried to speak, tried to twist the narrative, claiming we were lying, that Nathan was mentally unstable, but nobody listened anymore. The illusion had cracked, and through it, everyone saw the rot they had tried so hard to mask. One by one, relatives turned away from my parents. Some offered me quiet support. Others just stared, ashamed they'd once sided with those who would strike their own son for refusing to hand over something so personal, so earned, so deeply symbolic of sacrifice. My injuries were seen to by a family friend who was a nurse. Police were quietly called, by Nathan, I would learn later. There were consequences. A restraining order was filed. My parents, once respected pillars of the community, became the subject of public disgrace. As for me, I left the hall that night with more than a bruised face and a battered heart. I left with clarity. I left with truth. And I left with unexpected strength. Weeks passed. Life was quieter now, emptier in some ways, yet lighter. Layla sent me a letter. It was short. Just 3 lines. I'm sorry. I didn't know how much they were using all of us. I hope one day you can forgive me. I hadn't replied. I didn't know if I ever would. But I did forgive for myself. Because carrying that anger was like drinking poison and expecting them to suffer. Letting go wasn't for them. It was for me. I stayed in my home, my sanctuary, built on years of work, tears, and dreams. No one would take it from me again. And though that day had shattered our family, it built something stronger inside me. A voice. A spine. A belief that standing alone is better than kneeling in betrayal. Thank you for being with me through this deeply personal story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and support more real, emotional journeys like this only on Storytelling and Beyond.